So today's lecture is on Chapter 1, Networking Technology. So networking today, networks can now connect us with no boundaries. So communication is almost as important to us as our reliance on air, food, water, and shelter. In today's world, through the use of networks, we are connected like never before. So consider it a world without boundaries. Global communities coming together in the human network interacting with each other easily or much more easily through networking today. So things that you need to be familiar with. So one of the very first things you're going to learn about is different terminologies with regard to the networking realm. So every computer on a network is called a host or an end device. A server is a computer that provides information to end devices. So a lot of times when you think about a server, especially when nowadays when we talk very highly about data centers and that's where all your information is stored, everyone seems to think that a server has to be this very high-end piece of equipment. A server technically can be just a more robust computer that has more processing power, more memory, larger hard drive, and you can use something like that, which is very common to do in a small mom or pop or small organizational environment. So you could put on that device things such as, or you can have that device act as an email server, as well as a web server, as well as a file server. So it is one central point where everything is stored upon it, and you as the administrator would have to update, you'd be responsible for anything having to do with that server and the software that you are running on that server. Now clients, on the other hand, are computers that send requests to the server to retrieve information from the server. So as an example, a web page from a web server, an email from an email server. So your email server runs email server software. So clients would then use the client software to access the email. Obviously, the easiest example to use is you signing into your CCRI email account. Now, a web server runs web server software. So clients will use this browser software to access web pages. So anytime that you go into a browser and you type in either an IP address or you type in www.ccri.edu, the minute you hit that enter button, you are asking for a server from a a service from a web server. That service is, please send me the file that has the code that will display ccri.edu as it's supposed to be displayed. And likewise, a file server will store corporate and user files, and so therefore the client devices access these files. So when you have two different employers working at two separate locations, you can create something like an FTP site or a file transfer protocol site, and you can upload all your corporate documents there. So regardless of location, someone in Boston could download the file, work on the file, save the file, and then upload it again into the appropriate area. And then someone in, Providence could also go into that file server, grab that file, do their edits, save it, and upload it again. Now, it is possible to have a device be a client and a server in a peer-to-peer network. So the two network types that you're going to concentrate on, and we will talk about these again, is client, server client, which is we just spoke a little bit about, and then peer-to-peer. So in a peer-to-peer type of network, it is only recommended for a very small network, home situation, something like that, very small startup business. It is easy to set up, it is less complex, it is lower cost, It is used for simple tasks like transferring files and sharing printers. So disadvantages, there is no centralized administration. So in a server client, as we saw in the past slide, you have that one dedicated machine. Now, the good thing about that is an administrator can do all their updates on that one machine. The downside to that is that one machine is a single point of failure. It is not as secure as a server client situation. It is not as scalable, and it is definitely slower performance. So an end device is where a message is going to originate from, known also as the source or the sender, or where it is received, known also as the destination or the receiver. Data is always going to originate with an end device. It will then flow through your internetwork, and then it will also arrive at an end device. So an intermediary device, now these symbols here, as you see on the slide right over here, do understand that there is no standardized representation of networking devices. These are Cisco's representation, which you need to know. So an intermediary device interconnects end devices. So examples include your switches, your wireless access points, routers, and firewalls. Their responsibility is management of data as it flows through a network, and also things that are listed below: regenerating and retransmitting data signals, maintaining information about what pathways exist in the network, notifying other devices of errors and communication failures. They're responsible for directing data along alternate pathways when there is a link failure. They classify and direct messages according to priorities, and they permit or deny the data flow of data based on security settings. So what I should have started with is this particular chapter is an overview of everything you're going to learn this semester. So all these topics that we're talking about slide by slide, we're going to break down further in the subsequent chapters that will follow. Now, I have a note here. Not shown is a legacy Ethernet hub. So an Ethernet hub is known as a multi-port repeater. Repeaters regenerate and retransmit communication signals. So the series of ones and zeros that are going out as your bits and your digital electronics, when it gets to an Ethernet hub, when it gets to an intermediary device, that signal is rebuffed. So the rebuffing is a process so that the signal, by the time it gets to the destination, it will be the same as when it was generated from the source. So let me just draw you a hub here. It can be either one of these symbols. So that is basically what a symbol of a hub looks like. And even though we consider the hub to be obsolete, I still do introduce the fact that it is a device in networking, because some small mom and pops will still use a hub as opposed to a higher, more expensive switch. Now, you're also going to learn about your network media. So communication across a network is carried through a medium which allows a message to travel from source to destination. So media types, we're going to talk about 3 different media types. You're going to talk about copper, fiber optic, and wireless. Those are the 3, although there are multiple other types of media out there. These are the 3 that Cisco concentrates on. Other than that, what you're going to learn about is the different media types, different descriptions. So digital electronics is based on the binary bits of 1 and 0. So a 1, you want to think about a 1 as being on and a 0 as being off. There's multiple different ways that we could represent the value of a 1 and a 0 bit, and we'll talk about that in a little while. So within metal wires, within cables, those would use electrical impulses. So I'll give you a little example here. Electrical impulses. So if I'm talking about electrical impulses, I'm talking about voltage. So a 1 could perhaps be 5 volts on the wire, where a 0 would be 0 volts on the wire. Now, when we talk about fiber optics, that is light, pulses of light. So an example again here. And then, of course, within your wireless realm, it is going to use different modulations of specific frequencies of the electromagnetic waves. So do be familiar with this at this juncture, but when we get to chapter 4, which is all about the cabling, we will delve deeper into these topics. So some criteria to consider when you are choosing network media. What is the maximum speed that the media can successfully carry a signal? So when we do go over chapter 4, you're going to learn that certain cables can only run a certain length of meters. So anytime you're going to exceed the specifications of a particular cable, you will run into a situation, or you could run into a situation called attenuation. So if I take a cable that is 100 meters, that has the capability of running 100 meters, and I do not attach it to either an intermediary device or something like a repeater, it just goes from source to destination, but I exceed that 100 meters, then attenuation is loss of signal. So because I've gone ahead and I've gone above the standard destination, or distance, not destination, distance for that particular cable, then I could lose my signal power. And so what started out at the source as a series of 1s and 0s could look very differently at the destination with a different series of 1s and 0s. The environment in which media will be installed. So when we're in the classroom in 2054, you realize that these are cinder blocks. The whole entire building is made out of cinder blocks. So you're not going to be snaking cables down a cinder block or through a cinder block. So take notice, if you've not already, next time we're in class, that we have plastic conduit that runs on the walls, and both the electrical and the data are run through those conduits. What is the amount of data, and at what speed must it be transmitted? So that is going to depend on what does your organization do? What is the cost of the media and the installation? So obviously we know that fiber is the most expensive. So you should only usually see it in the backbone of your network. But again, cost is going to be inherent to the particular organization and the amount of money that they want to spend. Now, network diagrams, often called topology diagrams, use symbols to represent devices within the network. Important terms to know include, so what you're seeing here are different things up here. You have on the left, you have a typical old school network interface card. So if you had a tower, an old school PC that was a tower, and you needed networking capabilities, this would be for a wired network situation. On the right-hand side, if you needed speciality, You could purchase an interface card, just like when you had anybody who ever worked on PCs, or you get a system in, a gaming system, and you don't like the graphics, you want a different graphics card. You purchase a different graphics card and you pop it in your machine. Same thing here. With both your router and your switch, depending on the model that you're looking at, they both have modularity, where you can swap out and purchase what you need for your particular situation. Now, important terms again. Network interface card, as I just pointed out, this is an example of a wired network NIC. Now, a wireless NIC card would look the same, except off the back, it would have a little tiny antenna. Now today, both of these situations are embedded in most of your equipment that you're buying. But years ago, you had to purchase these interface cards if you needed networking in your particular scenario. Now you're going to you're going to hear the terms physical port and interfaces, modularity, the more we go along. All of these things have to do with the particular model you're looking at and the ports that come with it as is. A physical port is a connector or outlet on a network device where the media connects to and an end device or another networking device will plug into. So be careful. Let me just, and then, so I just want to make sure you're following the arrows. So let me just outline those arrows a little bit better for you. So a physical port is a port that you cannot change. It is embedded on that device, much like your motherboard from a PC. You cannot swap those out. Those are soldered directly to the motherboard. On the flip side, if I want that modularity and I want to add a particular option to my device itself and it is available to you, what you see on this screen with this modularity here, or specific interfaces, this one here happens to be a serial interface. So this particular company, for whatever reason, whatever protocol they're going to be running or type of connection that they're purchasing from the ISP, they needed this type of interface card in order to make that situation happen for them. So again, physical ports, you get what you get, whatever model you came, or whatever the model came with. Interfaces, specialized ports that you can purchase and swap out based on your need. Because routers connect networks, the ports on a router are referred to as network interfaces. Often, the terms port and interface will be used interchangeably as we go forward. Now, again, this is a slide that you might want to, print down and have in your folder. Network representations. Again, these are Cisco's symbols. So your first thing is your end devices, things like your desk computer, IP phone, laptops, wireless tablets, printers, telepresence, VoIP phones. Oh, there is an IP phone there. Things like that. End devices. Intermediary devices lie between the end device and the internet. So your wireless router, your LAN switch, your multi-layer switch, firewall appliance, and router. And again, don't forget about that hub. And then your network media. The squiggly line identifies a wireless media. A straight line is a local area network media. And a lightning bolt symbolizes a wide area network type of media. Now, here's my topology diagrams. Network architects and administrators must be able to show what their networks will look like. So, they need to be able to easily see which components connect to other components, where they will be located, and how they will be connected. I cannot stress to you enough that after you go through your studies and you become a network admin, and even other types of admins, your main functionality is watching the network via monitors, monitoring software, sniffing software. All of those things, your functionality is to watch what is going on in your network. Now, by creating things like this, I don't ever physically have to go to a closet or a room because I know exactly what everything is addressed as and everything is connected to. So your first one is your physical topology diagram. Take the word for what it is. Anytime we talk about that word physical, we are talking about it being done in hardware. So physical topology represents the actual physical location of your intermediary devices and cable installations. So they'll be identified by different rooms, where they're located in the racking system. So things you see on the left-hand side here. Your server room. This is a web server. This is your email server. This is your file server. So in this instance, they are 3 separate devices. But this one is on rack 2, shelf 1. This one is on rack 2, shelf 2. This one is on rack 2, shelf 3. Okay? And the switch that they all connect into is on rack 1, shelf 2. So how exactly is everything physically connected? The flip side to that coin is your logical topology. It is a diagram that demonstrates or illustrates devices, ports, and the addressing scheme of the network. So now going forward, I want you to think of that word logical as something that is done in software. So, networks, ports, okay, things of that nature. So what ports are actually connected in? So the topology should look the same between your physical and your logical with regard to the symbols. But the information that they will hold is very different. So networks come in many sizes. You have a small home network, which will connect a few computers to each other and the internet. This is what most of you have at home. Then you may have a small home office, which enables computers within a home or remote office to connect to a corporate network. Somebody working from home remotely. Then you have a medium to large network, many locations with hundreds or thousands of interconnected computers. And then lastly, you have the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web connects hundreds of millions of computers worldwide, such as the internet. Alrighty, so LANs and WANs. You need to be very familiar with LANs and WANs. So, network infrastructures vary greatly in terms of size of area that needs to be covered, the number of users that need to be connected, the number and types of services that will have to be available, and the area of responsibility. The 2 most common types that you really have to get your head wrapped around, and there are multiple more that we'll go over as we go along, but these 2 are the first ones that you need to be familiar with. Local area network carries local significance. So what that means is everybody is in the same geographic location. So let me draw you the local area networks. Okay, so those three are your local area networks. Now, your wide area networks will incorporate your internet service providers. So when you're talking about wide area networks, you're talking about a cost factor. What are you going to purchase from an ISP for your organization? So in this diagram, your cloud represents the internet. And again, go back to the previous slide with the diagrams and with the symbols. Your lightning bolts signify WAN connections. Okay, so again, you need to be very familiar when you're looking at diagrams and identifying certain parameters within that diagram. A little bit more information about your LANs and WANs. Again, a LAN is a network infrastructure that spans a small geographic area, whereas a WAN is a network infrastructure that spans a wide geographic area, and again, utilizes ISPs. So LANs will interconnect end devices in a limited area, such as a home, school, building, or campus, administered by a single organization or individual, and they will provide high-speed bandwidth to internal devices. So again, local, internal. Your WAN will interconnect LANs over a wide geographic area, such as between states, provinces, countries, or continents, typically administered by one or more service providers, and they will typically provide slower speed links between LANs. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go further along. Now, the internet itself is a worldwide collection of interconnected LANs and WANs. So your LANs are connected to your WANs, or they're connected to each other using your WANs. The red WAN connection lines represent all the varieties of ways we can connect networks. So WANs can use copper wire, they can use fiber optic, they can use wireless, they can use satellite, DSL, so many different types. So this is just a generalized picture so that you understand that you have your LANs that are internal to the organization, and then to have communication with other LANs, you need to go through the internet via WAN connections and purchasing a service from your ISP. So the internet itself is not owned by any individual or group. The following groups were developed to maintain structure on the internet. And again, you don't, excuse me, you don't have to delve deeply into these, but you do have to understand who does what and the dynamic of networking. Your first one, the IETF, Internet Engineering Task Force. They develop and promote voluntary internet standards, in particular, the standards that will comprise the Internet Protocol Suite, TCP/IP. IAB is the Internet Architecture Board. It is a committee of the Internet Engineering Task Force and an advisory board of the Internet Society, ISOC. ICANN, this one you will need to know explicitly because this one is the Internet Corporation for assigned names and numbers. So your IP addresses, domain names, that is the organization that is in charge of that. So it is an American multi-stakeholder group and nonprofit organization responsible for coordinating the maintenance and procedures of several databases related to the namespaces and numerical spaces of the Internet. Now, everybody is familiar with the Internet. It is a global system of interconnected computer networks that uses the Internet Protocol Suite, TCP/IP. And we'll talk about TCP/IP in a little bit, to communicate between networks and devices. But there are actually two more types of networks that you need to be familiar with. There is the intranet. Now, think of intra, into, okay? Intra. Okay? It is a private collection of LANs and WANs that are internal to an organization that is meant to be accessible only to the organization's members or others with authorization. Examples: Lotus Notes, which was used for people inside IBM's network to communicate with others within IBM. The other one you have is an extranet, external. So, an organization might use an extranet to provide secure access to their network for individuals who work for a different organization that need access to their data on their network. So an example here would be a Home Depot who has to order supplies from a plumbing company, or a hospital may be providing a booking system for their doctors. Now, there are many ways to connect users and organizations to the Internet. Popular services for home users and small offices will include broadband cable, broadband digital subscriber line, wireless WANs, and mobile services. Organizations need faster connections to support IP phones, video conferencing, and data center storage. So you have business class interconnections are usually provided by service providers and may include business DSL, lease lines, and Metro Ethernet. So home and small office. Home users, remote workers, and small offices typically require connection to an ISP to access the Internet. Connection options vary greatly between ISPs and geographical locations. So this is just like you going through Cox, comparing it to Verizon, and comparing it to, I don't even know what else is out there, all different cabling companies or ISPs that you compare and then choose the best option. You do the same type of thing here. So it could be a cable connection, which is high bandwidth, always on, offered by cable television service providers. It could be a DSL, which is high bandwidth, always on, internet connection that runs over a telephone line. It could be cellular, which is going to use a cell phone network to connect to the Internet. It could be satellite, which is a major benefit to rural areas without ISPs, or it could simply be old school dial-up telephone, which is a very inexpensive, low bandwidth option using a modem. So on this slide, I'm not going to read this all to you, but this is something that you can go over. And again, we will go over this again going forward. But go ahead and read these descriptives. I just gave you a little bit more information. And then we have our business internet connections. So same types of things. If you have a business, you're going to do the same functionalities that you would from your home network. You're going to compare. You're going to contrast. You're going to see who's going to give me the most of what I need. What other services do I have to purchase besides what they're giving me at a flat rate? All things like that. So your corporate connection options may differ from home user options. Businesses may require higher bandwidth, dedicated bandwidth, and managed services. Connection options that are available differ depending on the type of service providers located nearby. So different types of connections you could look into: a dedicated lease line. These are reserved circuits within the service provider's network that connect distant offices with private voice and/or data. A very, very costly connection type. So when you're talking about dedicated lease lines, you're talking money. You have an Ethernet WAN. This type of network extends your LAN access into the WAN. You have DSL for business, available in various formats, including symmetric digital subscriber lines. And then you have satellites, which again can provide a connection when a wired solution is not available. And again, for your perusing enjoyment. Now, we have a terminology today called a converging network. So you have to kind of think back, and I know a lot of you in this class are a little younger. Most of you, everybody in this class is younger than I. But way back when, if you had a data network, you had a data team, you had a separate data network. If you had a telephone system, different telephone team, different telephone network. So, each technology that your organization had, telephone, video, data, all had their own separate networks and their own specialized team members. Today, we are capable of taking all of these different types of data and utilizing one network. That is a converged network. So before converged networks, an organization would have been separately cabled for telephone, video, and data. Each of these networks would use different technologies to carry the signal. Each of these technologies would use a different set of rules and standards. And each one of these networks had personnel with specialized talents to run them. So as you see here, you had separate rules and agreements and standards for each type of network. In today's environment, converged data networks carry multiple services on one link, including data, voice, and video. Converged networks can deliver data, voice, and video over the same network, incurring a lower cost. The network infrastructure uses the same set of rules and standards. However, you still do need personnel with specialized talents to run different parts of the network. At CCRI, down the end of the hall, is our IT networking server environment. So we are all a converged network, but we have a network team, we have a server team, we have an IT team, we have a programming team, all specialized individuals, one converged network running the same rule, the same agreement, the same standard. One for all. Now, within your network, there are things that need to be considered that are very important to the architecture of your network. The terminology of network architecture alone refers to the technologies that support the infrastructure that moves data across the network. Now, the role of the network has changed from a data-only network to a system that enables the connections of people, devices, and information in a media-rich converged network environment. Networks also must support a wide range of applications and services. They must operate over many different types of cables and devices, which make up the physical infrastructure. Within network architecture, there are 4 basic characteristics. You have fault tolerance, scalability, quality of service, and security. So fault tolerance. A fault-tolerant network limits the impact of a failure by limiting the number of affected devices. The ruling is your end users, users should never feel the impact of a failure. Multiple paths are required for fault tolerance, referred to as redundancy, as you see here. Reliable networks provide redundancy by implementing a packet-switched network. So information that flows over the internet are referred to as packets. Packet switching means traffic is being split into packets that are routed over a network. Now, as you can see in this picture, they can travel multiple different paths from source to destination. Each packet could theoretically take a different path to a destination. So, we'll use this guy as they have outlined here. Okay, this would be my source. And in this instance, it's going here, it's going here, it's going here to get out to the internet. If something were to happen, it could also go where? Here, 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 if this was up instead of down. Okay, it could also go, again, if this were up instead of down, it could go here, 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 and here. So that is the nature of packet switching, all to get to our intended destination, which I'll pick over here because they did not outline one. This is not possible with circuit switched. So within a circuit switched network, it will establish one of those dedicated circuits, meaning every single time that device goes to utilize the internet, it uses the same dedicated path. So this is what you pay for, a dedicated service for that one particular situation. Anytime that end user needs to speak and get out to the internet, it will use the same dedicated path. Now, within scalability, a scalable network can expand quickly and easily to support new users and applications without impacting the performance of services to your existing users. Network designers need to follow accepted standards and protocols in order to make the network scalable, like including a certain percentile for growth of a network. So when you go out there and you're designing, let's say you're a network designer, which there is such a thing, and that's all you do is design networks. If you design a network and sell that design to an organization, and then that organization, thankfully for that organization, grows exponentially, they need more things in their network. You do not want to have to go back to them and say, I can certainly give you all those things that you're looking for, but it will cost X hundreds of thousands of dollars more. That is not going to fly. So you need to be aware of growth in case it does happen. That could be something so simplistically as buying a switch with more ports, having a backup piece of equipment if you need something else, having extra cabling to run more situations into one of your intermediary devices. So these are things you always need to be concerned with. So here in this diagram, you see additional users and whole networks can be connected to the internet without degrading performance for existing users. So always, always, and the magical number is going to be something like 10 to 15% growth, at least. Now, quality of service. Voice and live video transmission require higher expectations for those services being, excuse me, being delivered. Anyone who was in the era when networking first started out will remember buffering when you tried to watch something over the internet, constantly stopping and starting and stopping and starting. And so think about the gamers out there. How would you feel if every time you were playing your game, it would have to stop and then start and then stop and then start? So, quality of service is the primary mechanism used to ensure reliable delivery of content for all users. With a policy in place, and you will put a policy in place whether or not you use it. So do understand that QoS only comes into effect when your network is feeling congestion. Now, should you have a policy in place? Absolutely so. So quality of service managed by the router ensures that priorities are matched with the type of communication and its importance to the organization. Now, you're not going to really learn about QoS until you get to Cisco 3. However, you go out there, and again, based on what your critical data is, okay, dependent on your organization, you prioritize. Every organization is going to prioritize voice and video. So you will learn more about this. So you have priority queues. So you may have a high priority, a medium priority, and a low priority. And in Cisco 3, you're going to learn how you classify your types of data into one of those three categories. So without QoS, if a company does not employ QoS, it means every single type of data is handled the same. It doesn't care if it's a voice over IP, it doesn't care if it's an email. Whoever got to the bandwidth first, that's who goes. So QoS comes into play again when your network feels congestion. Then only those types of data that is identified as a priority of high will utilize the network first. And then when it is done, lower priorities will be able to use the network. So whether or not it comes into play, again, only for congestion purposes, should you go ahead and instill one? Absolutely so. Now, there are two main types of network security that must be addressed. Number one, I mentioned this in class, network security is a multi-layer thing. It is not one device, it is not one circumstance, it is multi-layer. Your network infrastructure security, physical security of network devices, preventing unauthorized access to your devices. So, first and foremost, these classrooms are set up to be networking closets. You should never see one of these racking systems out in the open. Have I in the real world? I have. Should it be? Absolutely not. Only the personnel that should be able, or only the personnel that needs to work on these racking systems or the network should be allowed to get to the equipment. So your network and equipment behind locked doors, only the personnel allowed would have a key pass or a key code to get them in. That is your first line of defense of security. Physically securing your network devices so not just anyone can come in and pop a cable in a port and wreak havoc on your network. Excuse me. You then have information security, which is protection of the information or data transmitted over the internet. So I'll tell you the brief story again, what happens at CCRI, and I'm not making this up, this is a real thing. When someone gets fired from CCRI, they don't know they're fired until they're being walked out of the building. And the reason why that happens is from the point that they step out of their office, cubicle, cubbyhole, wherever they live, escorted by 2 security guards out of the building. By the time they get out of the building, everything having to do with themselves completely wiped away from CCRI's networking capabilities. We don't tell people that they're getting fired because what could they do? They could do damage to physical equipment. They could delete files in a wild frenzy to really get back at CCRI. Okay, so these are things you really have to think about. You can't be thinking about, oh, I'm going to let Joe go today, but Joe, he's a good guy. He won't do anything. Joe certainly will. So, very, very important. 3 goals of network security. Confidentiality means only intended recipients can read the data. Integrity assures that the data has not been altered while during transmission. Sorry, that should say while. And availability, assurance of timely and reliable access to data for those authorized users only. That's it. So security measures protect the network from unauthorized access. Administrators can protect the network with software and hardware security and by preventing physical access again to your networking devices. Now, recent trends. The role of the network must adjust and continually transform in order to be able to keep up with new technologies and end user devices as they constantly come to the market. Several new networking trends that affect organizations and customers or consumers are as such. And again, this slideshow is as of 2016, so obviously there's more things out there. Bring your own device. Online collaboration, video communications, and cloud computing. So let's break those down. Bring your own device, BYOD, allows users to use their own device, giving them more opportunity and greater flexibility. It allows end users to have the freedom to use personal tools to access information and communicate using their own laptops, notebooks, tablets, etc. BYOD means any device with any ownership used anywhere. Now, big security fright for security personnel. Not a happy picture trying to protect everybody who's trying to do their own thing. Online collaboration. You can collaborate and work with others over the network on joint projects. There are collaboration tools including Cisco WebEx, which gives users a way to instantly connect and interact. No longer do we have to get on the phone at CCRI. We just bring up a WebEx conference and we can talk directly to the individual and have, if they're available, instantaneous responses. Collaboration is a very high priority for businesses and in education. You guys are using Blackboard. That is a collaboration tool where I am collaborating with you and offering you different pieces of information that you are able to get and respond to. You have Cisco WebEx Teams, which is a multifunctional collaboration tool. You can send instant messages, you can post images, post videos and links, etc. And again, in this course, we will be utilizing Blackboard's now Ultra collaboration tool. Cloud computing. Big topic. I'm still not a fan of cloud computing. Allows us to store personal files or backup our data on servers over the internet. Applications can also be accessed using the cloud. It allows businesses to deliver to any device anywhere in the world. It is made possible by data centers. So, excuse me, please don't get cloud computing confused with a data center. A data center is a centralized location. Cloud computing is saving your information to the internet cloud. So I would say outside of network cybersecurity that you guys are mostly in, a data center is also a very high-paying job currently, in my opinion. So a centralized location where computing and networking equipment is centralized or concentrated for the purpose of collecting, storing, processing, distributing, or allowing access to large amounts of data. So you will see them come into play for smaller companies that can't afford their own data center, that want to lease server and storage services from a larger data center organization in the cloud. Very cool option today for businesses, especially a smaller mom and pop, or even just a smaller business organization. Now, there are a few different types, so do be familiar with them. You have public clouds. These are cloud-based applications and services that are offered in a public cloud, made available to the general population. Services may be free or they may be offered on a pay-per-use model, such as paying for online storage. The public cloud uses the internet to provide those services. Then you have a private cloud. Still, cloud-based applications and services offered in a private cloud are intended for a specific organization or entity, such as the government. A private cloud can be set up using organizational private network, though this can be expensive to build and maintain. A private cloud could also be maintained by an outside organization with strict access security. Then you have your hybrid. Go with what the word means. It means a combination of different things. A hybrid cloud is going to be made up of 2 or more clouds. Example, I can have a part private cloud in conjunction with a part public cloud, where each part remains a distinct object, but both are connected using a single architecture. So individuals in a hybrid cloud would be able to have degrees of access to various different services based on their own access rights. And then you have community clouds. These are created exclusively by specific entities or organizations. The difference between community and public are the functional needs that have been customized for the community. So as an example, a healthcare organization must remain compliant with policies and laws, those governing your HIPAA laws. They require authentication and confidentiality. Community clouds can also be used by multiple organizations that have similar needs and concerns. Community clouds are similar to a public cloud, but with set levels of security, privacy, and even regulatory compliance of a cloud or of a private cloud. Now, smart home technology is a growing trend that allows technology to be integrated into everyday appliances, which allows them to interconnect with other devices. Ovens might know what time to cook a meal for you by communicating with your calendar on what time you are scheduled to be home. Smart home technology is currently being developed for all rooms within a house. Smart home technology will become more common as home networking and high-speed internet technology expands. So what this might mean for you, power line networking, as an example, can allow devices to connect to a LAN where data networking cables or wireless communications are not a viable option. So by using a standard power line adapter that you see here, devices can connect to the LAN wherever there is an electrical outlet by sending data on certain frequencies. Power line networking is especially useful when wireless access points cannot reach all the devices in your home. In addition to DSL and cable, wireless is another option to connect homes and small businesses to the internet. More commonly found in rural environments, a wireless internet service provider, a WISP, is an ISP that connects subscribers to designated access points or hotspots. So you can see a little wireless farm. I don't know if you've ever seen one driving down the road. It would just be a culmination of multiple wireless towers that you see here. Wireless broadband is another solution for home and small businesses. It uses the same cellular technology used by your smartphone. So an antenna is installed outside the house, providing wireless or wired connectivity for the devices inside the home. Now, security. Talk a little bit about network security threats. Again, we're going to go over these topics over and over again. I'm sure you probably already have heard of them if you've taken Intro to Cyber or even computer ethics. Network security is an integral part of the networking regardless of the size of the network. Network security that is implemented must take into account the environment while securing the data, but still allowing for quality of service that is expected of your network. Securing a network involves many protocols, technologies, devices, tools, and techniques in order to secure data and mitigate threats. So as I've already mentioned, network security is a layered effect. Threat actors might be external or internal. So, no one ever really thinks about internal threats. But go back to the example of someone being walked out of CCRI. If that person had an inkling that they were being fired, they would certainly be an internal threat. They could destroy property, they could delete information data, they could do multiple different things. However, also understand that internal threats are not always malicious. You could be in a rush somewhere, going somewhere, and your colleague says, "Hey, Charlene, I need that information that's on your computer." "Okay, I can use it. Here's my username and password." You're not intending any malicious harm, but what you just done is you not only gave that individual access to your computer, you gave that individual access to you, and all that is yours. So, as we go along, we're going to talk more about different types of security threats. And again, hate to beat a dead horse, but you are going to hear these things over and over and over again throughout your studies. So there are several common external threats. Viruses, worms, and Trojan horses. These contain malicious software or code that is running on a user's device. Spyware and adware. These are types of software which are installed on a user's device. The software then secretly collects information about that user. Zero-day attacks, also called zero-hour attacks. These occur on the first day that a vulnerability becomes known. Then you have threat actor attacks. This is a malicious person attack. Wait a minute. I'm going to start that one again. A malicious person attacks user devices or networking resources. A disgruntled employee. Denial of service attacks. These attacks slow or crash applications and processes on a network server. So they will attack a DHCP server, which is dynamic host control protocol. They will attack a DNS server, domain name service. So by overloading those servers with malicious information, vital users within your organization cannot access what they need to access in order to function in their environment. Data interception and theft. This attack captures private information from an organization's network. And then you have identity theft, which is probably the one most people will hear about and know about. This attack is going to steal the login credentials of a user in order to access private data. And again, equally important to consider those internal threats. There have been many studies that show that the most common data breaches happen because of internal users of the network. This can be attributed to lost or stolen devices, accidental misuse by employees. Hey, if you need to work on my computer, my password and username are taped to the back of my keyboard. And in the business environment, even malicious employees. With the evolving BOYD strategies, corporate data is much more vulnerable to both types of attacks, external and internal. So take a look at this little diagram on the right-hand side of your screen. This is that layered effect. So even before you get out to the internet, okay, so before the internet, this is your internal network. So first and foremost, you have your end users here. Then you have a security device here. Well, that's a switch actually. Then you have your LAN switch here. Your LAN switch is then attached to a firewall. In that firewall, you can create circumstances to allow or deny. You can have ports opened or closed. So if I leave a port open, that means I'm allowing a certain piece of data to enter into my network. If I don't want that certain piece of data, I shut it off. Next, you have your routers. So one thing you've already learned with your routers and your switches, your very first form of protection are passwords. Okay? On your routers, you could have access control lists. This is a list of permit and deny statement. I know this is a very busy slide, I do apologize. So in that ACL, you could say, Daniel, who is my network administrator, has access to all my devices. However, the server team does not, because the server team is doing the server stuff. They don't need access to the network stuff. So you have the capability to create these lists of permit and deny. Now understand that without any ACLs, without any firewalls, everything, by the simple nature of communication, is allowed. So if everything is allowed, then you are opening yourself up to multiple attacks. So network security, again, multiple layers using more than one security solution. Network security components for the home and small office, antivirus and anti-spyware. These applications help to protect end devices from becoming infected with malicious software. You can also do firewall filtering, so on those firewall devices, firewall filtering will block unauthorized access into and out of the network. So referred to as whitelists and blacklists. So your whitelist could be a list of URLs that are safe. Your blacklist could be URLs that are dangerous or malicious. Okay, so in networking, your ISPs, whether or not you realize this, your connection to your ISP is normally shared by other entities. So if you have a situation where your ISP has one connection out to multiple homes, let's say, as an example, and for some reason, home number 2 is doing something malicious. Okay, your ISP isn't just going to shut off here. It's going to shut off here. And by doing that, no one would get information. So you have to really streamline what exactly it is within your organization, even at your home. I explained in class, for those of you who are here, you have the capability to go into your little home routers and do different functionalities to them. I mean, within reason, your ISP is not going to let you do a whole lot of stuff, but you can certainly at least change the name, put a password on. Now, larger networks have additional security requirements. So they will have a dedicated firewall system, which will provide more advanced firewall capabilities that can have large amounts of data with more granularity. Access control lists. These further filter access and traffic forwarding based on IP addresses and applications. Intrusion prevention systems. These identify fast-spreading threats such as zero-day attacks. So intrusion prevention means not only do they detect them, but they correct them. Oops. And they have another device that is not listed here. It is intrusion detection system. Oops. And they probably don't list it here as really a security solution because the only thing that an IDS system does, it detects. So it'll detect threats, but it does not correct the threat. Now, you also have virtual private networks, VPNs. These are going to provide access into an organization for remote workers. So when COVID first hit, the IT people were inundated with phone calls, people coming in. They had to grab laptops. They had to be set up with a connection. So VPN is exactly what it says. Virtual private network, meaning it is only for you. So you need to be established. You need to be put into a particular department. You need to be assigned a username and password, and only you have access into the network utilizing that private network connection. So network security requirements must consider the environment as well as the various applications and computing requirements, both home and business environments, must be able to secure their data while still allowing for the quality of service that users expect of each technology. And again, I mentioned in class, even at home, your very first thing that you want to do in a home situation is so if you're not checking your updates in your home systems, you're doing yourself a tremendous disservice. Within your wireless, you want to change the SSID name. Its name is default, which means everybody who has a home router or home access point also is named default. You want to put a password on. And you want to shut off broadcasting. Broadcasting means exactly that. Every so many seconds or milliseconds, your device is shouting out to the world, hey, here I am. And if you don't do anything with changing the name, putting a password on, people will get in and utilize your connection. So this next thing I went over in class, it is just Cisco's path. I might even just in future delete this because we're not held to Cisco boundaries anymore. But pretty much I'll just go through it quickly and write down. You guys right now are at the CCNA level. So that is classes 1, 2, and 3. Once you finish those 3 courses, you can sit for the certification. Once you do, and if you pass, you are a Cisco Certified Networking Associate. This one is newer. I don't have a whole lot of information for you on that, but it's the next level between an associate and a professional. Your next one is, I think they're Encore and Anasi. Those are CCNP courses that we offer here. Each one has its own certification. You pass both, you are considered Cisco Certified Networking Professional. And after that, you can sit for the examination for a Cisco Certified Internetworking Engineer. This bottom level here is all software related, which we don't participate in. Okay, but you can certainly reach out on Cisco's website if you needed more information about those courses and those certifications. Networking jobs. You can go to www.netacad.com. You can click on the careers menu and then select employment opportunities to look around. You'll be doing something like this in Lab 193, which is researching networking in IT positions. And so that is it for this particular module or chapter, and I will see you in class.